All right, here we go again. Buckle up. It's a sensitive topic. We'll just start by saying what I just said. Give me a second. I want to drop this down, probably like one. That looks good. Here we are, and we should come to the conclusion, and and the court has probably come to the conclusion. You have to hear me out because there's a lot of parts to this. Racism and bias is universal to a certain degree. So there's always the chance that a percentage, because a percentage of the people are this, there's always a chance, no matter who is in power, that that will happen. And how do we know that? We've seen it now. The courts cannot live in a vacuum. They must realize what's happening and what has happened. And before people of color become angry at that, that's what happened in the 60s and the 70s when the government and the courts were ruling on behalf of people of color. They didn't live in a vacuum. The people that came in and argued against uh, the help that the courts ruled was valid for people of color weren't going to win the argument because we don't live in a vacuum. But today we don't live in a vacuum either. The last, so many years have been very telling. Now, okay, so I believe it's the Supreme Court. They want you to understand that case by case it still exists. There's no there's no thing where okay, now black people aren't uh, experiencing prejudice where they have certain rights uh, simply because there is some larger truth about politics, government, power that we now realize. And the statistics that Zoran's using are most likely skewed. Again, my information comes from God. Again, one of the weird things in my life, whether it is or it isn't, this is what I was led to understand. When I go to sleep, I go to heaven, wherever that is, and I give a report to God. I thought it was everybody, but apparently, one of my spiritual names, one of my spiritual personas, if that's what you want to call it, that's what that person does. But when I'm there, I receive from God also. So it's an interchange back and forth. There's some additional information. If I include Elon Musk in the incomes of white people in Butler County, boy, we're rich. But if I take Elon Musk and I take all the white judges and all the white politicians and all the white business people, I'm really going to skew those statistics. But what happens in that particular operation, the 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 poverty of white people is lost. The statistics don't mean really what they're being presented as. Again, you just have to help poor people. Again, there's another statistic that goes with that, and then we're trying to get this out quick so we can get into the rest of it. And we are the people. We exist. There are statistics that AOC and all the people of interest, similar to Zoran, have presented. That's that the real world wealth is held only by a small percentage. And it appears overwhelmingly they're white. Or not all of them, but in the United States, they're white. So your statistics aren't necessarily saying what the truth is. Because what you're including is that small, you're actually using the wealthy white people in New York that hold a large percentage of the wealth in New York. You're holding their income against the poor people who are obviously addicts and other things also that are white. So yes, there are very wealthy white people in New York, but you're really disenfranchising and discriminating against the poor white people. It would be considered unintelligent at this stage of the game because the Lord has given us additional intelligence. So again, the idea is there is still the opportunity to petition the federal court when you observe discrimination. In Tennessee, that may find a court that may agree to it, where it should be not occur. But there is no overwhelmingly large black population that says they are required to have a black politician or a black district. It's, I think, somewhere around 15% of Tennessee. Well, because hear me out, there's another part of this. And, Pearson and all them are really digging their own grave. And I don't mean that like KKK is going to come and kill you, even if they do. Again, maybe we need to heal that. I might be like, what's her name? Leave it, Carolyn, leave it. Well, because this is the other part. Now I want to go back some years, and I spoke about this before. I was in Maryland in the 1990s, Deputy U.S. Marshal. And I'm driving in a small Chevy Econo type of vehicle, four-door, loved it, was brand new, bought it when I went into the federal government when we lived in Philadelphia. And, I was a correctional officer, and we were happy to have it. We're very thankful. But at a certain point, again, after the deep state was probably killing me for many years, I'm driving down not as long as it is now, not decades, but it was probably about a decade at that point. And I'm driving down the road, and again, I'm asleep. So there is no, oh, God's speaking to me. God's showing me something. It was none of that. But it did happen, and that's probably what it was. So I'm in my car, and this thought comes up. Look what the person next to you is driving. But again, this is an asleep person. It's a way different world. There's no realization other than I think God either showed me myself so I would know it later and could use it like even today. Or, I don't know if God tested me. I think God knew me. I don't think there's a matter of a test. But he says, look what the black family's driving. Really nice Mercedes. Beautiful. Silver Mercedes. But I said, my thought was, I wouldn't say I said, my thought was, I realize that there's some black people. I think we're in the phase of calling them African American. Remember, it was like a few years in there, you had to call them African American. That just shows you the ludicrousy of it all. I don't know if that's a word, but it works. So I said, I realize that, but I'm not going to sit here and say that they're not disenfranchised. They are still, they are disenfranchised today. Many African Americans. So that person happens to be wealthier than me. But again, when we come forward all the way to today, and that same scenario is brought up, we know, we've seen, it's been in the court, it's been in the news. And again, they can't live in a vacuum. You're killing your cause. You're all walking around talking about disenfranchising different groups of people. And even cancel culture is absolutely criminal. It's just nobody is actually prosecuting it because everybody's using it. It's not only liberals that are using it. So what does that mean? This racism and this bias is universal to a certain degree, And when given the opportunity, based upon affirmative action, based upon DEI, even DEI, I understand wasn't there was discrimination within DEI, is what I was being told, and people do transmit this to me. If somebody's a black woman, maybe gay, looking for a promotion in government and thinking, hey, DEA or DEA, maybe that's where it comes from, and that's why it doesn't work. No, it comes from CIA is what I was. But maybe she's in DEA. I don't know. But she says it's going to help me. And again, government is dog eat dog at times, and hey, if something's there to help you, it helps you. But what she said, or what more than just one person, is that this person that's a female and gay and one of the best of the best, really best of the best, never got anywhere with DEI. It actually promoted somebody who was maybe a person of color or a gay person that was substandard, mediocre at best. So I don't know if coming full circle is actually what's happened, but we've experienced people of color in power, and they have disenfranchised white people, and then they launch a talking point where you really can't disenfranchise a white person. Yes, you can. Because I'm not the rich white person. Poor white people have as much in common with rich white people as an elephant has in common with a snail. I mean, it's that different. It's not apples and oranges. It's even worse. So we have this experience, and it's also in the courtroom, and it's going to increase, and they know it's going to happen, where white people are being disenfranchised on purpose. It isn't I'm being disenfranchised merely because of affirmative action or because of DEI. The whole goal, the entire goal. I'll get the other point. Hang on, Robert. Give me a second here. The whole goal of the process is to disenfranchise. But yet you're asking, and again, I'm not the only one who's bringing this up. Yet you're asking for special consideration. The court cannot empower bias, cannot be allowed to empower bias. And we're not just talking about DEI. We're not just talking about affirmative action. We're speaking about historical occurrences of willful bias, willful discrimination, willful racism against white people by those that ask for special consideration. The court cannot give you that extra special consideration because the court, as it did not live in a vacuum when it gave you special consideration, it can't deny that special consideration would be corrupt at this point. But on a case-by-case basis, everybody in the United States is allowed to petition the court. Now, there's another thing in that there is so much money being dumped into, you talk about billionaires. There's Democrat billionaires. And no, it's not to help. It's actually hindering the advancement of colored people. It's teaching them the wrong ways. So they dump all this money. Like, if I want to be represented, I'm a veteran, I probably could find something. But it's like the budget in New York City. $16,000 a day for veterans and millions for the immigrants alone. Let be the other people of color. So again, there's an outsized representation for legal argument Now, you've seen a lot of those cases get overturned. And I know for sure the Democrats are just thinking, well, we get a president in there and we'll put everybody into this, the appellate court. We'll even change the appellate court. Well, everybody's gaming the system. And yeah, Trump. Okay, so let me go this last part because Roberts wants it to get out. And I spoke about it the other day. And I don't know if Roberts knows this is happening. It's just his spirit is here. I'm with the court for whatever reason. It's just like a think tank inside. So I brought up somebody in the Zoran administration, and I think she should apologize and say there was a better way to handle it. And it's that simple. And cops that can respect you will respect you for it. But she attacked an Islamic cop. So why did we empower her? Because theoretically, your program that the court empowered helped that Islamic officer become an officer. Yet there she is attacking one of our own because he's doing the right thing. I know of no allegations against that officer for any type of corruption, any type of heavy-handedness. But because he's not an activist radical, I should hate him, even though he's the person that we created and the court created affirmative action and allowed DEI programs for. A man that quietly does his job and should not be restricted based upon his race, his religion, his creed, whatever it is. Yet those that are the loudest about disenfranchisement of people of color are disenfranchising and wanting to disenfranchise and hating on the man that affirmative action and DEI was created to empower. So the court cannot live in a bubble or in a vacuum. We see the videos from the wealthy Somali. And the problem is, if the system was not corrupt, that man would never be thinking that. We'd never been on that video saying that. I mean, at that point, he was, I guess, one of the millionaires. Shake and bake. Minnesota style. Yet you got addicts running around Minneapolis like nowhere else, except some of our worst cities. And a lot of them are white. I'm glad to see Vic is able to mix it up. He tries to keep a racial balance, Vic the good boss. So although again, the argument that racism and bias is universal, therefore, who cares? May the best man win, or most powerful entity win, whatever it is. No, we don't take that opinion. We will still fight racism and discrimination, but we can't live as though we're in the 1970s or 1960s. We can't say this is happening. At 15%, it could be a little higher, it could be a little lower, of the population in Tennessee, the court might find something, but they can't take special consideration beyond what the law says. They were going beyond what the law says. And even Republicans are okay with it. We believe, people of color deserve a fair shake. And in some communities, that shifted the power. And yes, what Tennessee did shifted the power. But to replace what one believes is discrimination with another form of discrimination is not what the court was engaged in the 1960s and 70s and 80s, even into the 90s. And it won't be now either. Maybe somebody that's working a conservative psychological operation steered you, but you have an obligation to, at a certain point, not to be it. I find that the income statistics in New York City do not provide a factual, and again, the Lord provided the information. That's the Almighty. I don't believe Jesus is God, but I believe he is a Ben Elohim, son of God. And I'm allowed to do that. And it's probably more accurate. And I'll get more into that later. There's a lot that goes on in my mind while I'm doing the prayers and other things, and I'll explain that. Doesn't give me a concrete answer as to what happened because there are several possibilities, but this is one of the possibilities. Because you're using, and again, it has to be investigated. I'm not 100% sure, but usually when I get information, it's pretty correct. And there's a cue that it's pretty correct. That because there are some very wealthy white people in New York, it's not providing a comparison, a realistic comparison to white people in general. Well, because, Ken, what's his name? Ken Griffin? Citadel. A lot of white people, a lot of rich white people. But the people, the regular everyday people have nothing in nothing. The guy driving the bus, the guy on the street on fentanyl, he got nothing in common with those people. So it's discriminatory to hold the wealth of some white people against poor white people. So, like I said, I usually get it pretty quick. You just have to serve poor people based upon their poverty. But the one thing about that is some people don't report their income, and that has to be looked at also. I'm not telling you to arrest people. I even found it weird that I know it's $36,000, but in the larger scheme of things, I don't know, it was a PG County, Maryland. I forget where it was. Some woman got arrested. I like to see what happened. She didn't report all the income in her house. A lot of people are only, they hit them with the "you owe us money" thing, but it's a garnishment. And I felt maybe that was more appropriate, but I want to see it might be an aggravating circumstance. Obviously, if the man I don't know what it is, but if the man you're dating is making 200 grand a year, you shouldn't be on SNAP if he's living with you. And you're rightly related, we're sharing, and the debts and all that. And sharing the bills and everything else. But because we don't, again, the court does not want to empower bias in either direction. It realizes bias exists, and now overwhelmingly realize that if I, as a court, again, if the law says to put a black district or a black person in, then the court's with it. It's not. It isn't going completely the other direction where they're going to come against black people. But it's overwhelmingly obvious that if I put a black politician in, there's a good chance that white people will be disenfranchised. And there are black people that understand what I'm saying and agree. And I was moved to tears years ago that I said, I want the black people to understand capitalism, exceeding capitalism. I don't want to give them something that hinders them from realizing the truth of how some of these white people make money. But quite frankly, I had an Irish side of the family. My aunt married a Catholic guy. We were Jewish, when aunt Catholic husband for a while, and his family was notoriously again when I was a little kid they were on public assistance, so they were like what people generally consider um, that what they call entitlements. The idea is to move that system back to being uh, the social safety net. There's nothing wrong with it. I was forced into it, quite honestly. There was nothing else I could do, and I did earn. I mean, they destroyed my mind pretty good, and court probably believes it. There isn't a court in the land that says it doesn't. It's probably personally, if you talk off the record, they'll say that it's not. That it, they'll say it happens. And some cases are never going to find their way into court. So again, in other words, you have officers that are shot, that shoot people, that kill themselves for a reason other than their own doing. Pull their gun too early, pull their gun too late. Again, I wasn't going to be that statistic. I already had stayed too long. I should have, went to a senator or something earlier. Again, there's ups and downs in awareness. Again, my awareness was big when I got out. And apparently the spirit was Ronald Reagan that initiated the exit. And he probably initiated the exit about 6 months before he passed. Maybe a little longer. Now, mind you, there are CIA people that knew what was going on but couldn't do anything. They tried, but there were people in the Justice Department that tried, but they outmaneuvered them because CIA was used to identify what was going on, so they could always counter. There were listening devices, all sorts of stuff. Again, it was a hostile takeover of government, and it wasn't like George Bush. It started before George Bush was took over the presidency, but they used the George Bush presidency, and they used George Bush. I don't think George Bush knew what was going on. I mean, he thought it was an honest effort, but it wasn't. It was just the deep state increasingly taking over. So again, some of it was biased, and some of it was that I wasn't biased against. But it used to be if you weren't biased against black people, they hated you too. That's the way the Marshal Service was. And there was another guy that actually got into the news because of it. I mean, to me, I joined what should have been the most racially sensitive, and more than racially sensitive, just the most. That's not the term I'm looking for actually, because that paints us, kind of an affirmative action picture. One it shouldn't wasn't looking for something like that or think it was something like that, but the most constitutionally correct agency in the world. That's what the Marshal Service is supposed to be. Because we were the first line of defense for that Constitution throughout history. Now, I mean the literal law, as well as the spirit of the law. So again, the issue is it's obvious that given a boost, that boost is not going to be appreciated to the point that fairness will be effectuated by those that are boosted. You still have to focus on your white poor if you're put in as a black community. I've been in black communities. I've been in Latino communities. I've been around Indian communities, people from India. I've been around Native American communities. Bias is universal. To a certain degree, we accept it as human nature, but at a certain degree, it can't not be accepted. And that's what's happening in those emplaced by DEI, by affirmative action, by saying, I need to have my district and my politician. As it sits today, illegal aliens are overrepresented because they were counted in the census. They're not to be represented. They're not even supposed to be here. It's okay. We're not going to kill them. They shouldn't be killed. They should be allowed to ask for amnesty, but they are citizens of a foreign nation. And although they have their day in court, they're not to have legislative representation. And it's overwhelmingly obvious that money is being moved from them, from those circles, because politicians don't represent for free. Sometimes worse than lawyers. So again, the House and the Senate was not created to represent foreign nations through transplanted foreign nationals that aren't supposed to be here. So that's why California is too powerful. You have too many representatives. And if they're not policing their vote, those same people might be voting in federal elections. Now, am I saying people that are conservative? No, I've spoken on conservatives and what their ills are. I'm not saying they're clean. But there's a big issue brewing, and everybody should be upfront and realize what the truth is. Sharpton had his time in place, but the cry disenfranchisement today, well, that's part of the political landscape we understand. That's part of the quote unquote game. So again, there's only so much the court can do when it comes to that. But people of color have been very vocal, including making statements that you cannot, as a person of color, be discriminating against a white person because Elon Musk has 80 billion and Donald Trump is president. You lost your greatest helps by discriminating against white people that didn't 100% agree with your radicalism, libtards, because you're libtards now. I wouldn't call you that before, but I'll call you that. You're totally libtardish. You're not normal, any of you. You're not liberals. You're libtards. I don't think you're interested in fixing these things. Maybe that was all those years. That's really what it was. You were trying to suppress the voice that could fix everything, along with the others. So again, the court allows and welcomes all claims of discrimination as far as legitimacy. Their jurisprudence is still the same, but the facts are now much different. To include, to the point of people that are empowered by affirmative action, empowered by DEI, empowered by laws that allow them districts and other things, and maybe the court even pushed a little further than the law stated, are now effectuating, while in power, the same ill they ask consideration against, or consideration for against. Well, the point is, if you can't, if a black government person, which is really the same as a white government person, can't give what they're supposed to give in that seat, why do they hold the seat? Why should the court push them into the seat? To just be the person that does it for black people or people of color? Again, if you have an individual claim, the court will always accept your claim and look at it and see if you have standing and all the other things that go along with it. We have an Islamic community. It's not the entire Islamic community, but it's larger than it's ever been. This part of the Islamic community that even wants to overthrow the Constitution, which is really a federal crime. Just be thankful this isn't 20, 25 years ago. You'd be in prison. So again, we're not going to force people to accept unlawful behavior in a future that would destroy everything we have. Well, stay peaceful. Praise God in all that you do. Praise God.